So tell us about pandas. What is that?
PANDAS is not the cute, cuddly bamboo munching bear that we're all familiar with. It's actually an acronym. It kind of raises eyebrows when I tell people because it's lengthy. It's Pediatric Autoimmune Neurological Disorders Associated with Strep.
Okay.
And basically, what that means is there's a strep infection that causes an unusual autoimmune response in the body. And for me, that was characterized by motor tics, loss of motor function and motor control, severe OCD and anxiety, compulsions, tics. Yeah, I went from being essentially normal, healthy young man to at the age of 13, just waking up one day and having these tics and these rituals and these very disruptive symptoms in my life. So it's very unusual that someone would get it that old. Usually it's very much younger children that get it. But it's interesting that it's a strep bacteria that causes this much larger problem in your life.
Yeah, strep is super common, and I don't think people are aware that it can ever cause anything else.
Right. I mean, yeah, everybody gets strep as a kid in particular. It's kind of expected. I had recurring strep infections as a kid, and in fact, I would test positive for strep even if I didn't have symptoms. So I often didn't even know if I had it. But looking back in my blood work, my strep antibodies were off the charts, and that was a big indicator that I had had strep over and over again with or without knowing it. And antibodies are one of the few compounds that can cross the blood-brain barrier. And so that's how PANDAS works is your antibodies are produced in such excess that they don't know where to go and they end up going into your brainstem and your basal ganglia, which is the motor cortex of your body. And that's not where antibodies are supposed to hang out. So they can cause all these other symptoms and problems that you would not normally associate with strep throat.
Uh, how did y'all come across the diagnosis?
It took a long time. It took about a decade to get a correct diagnosis, and that was the hardest part, quite honestly. For about 10 years, I was misdiagnosed with Tourette syndrome or anxiety or OCD. I was basically diagnosed with the symptoms instead of what the cause of the symptoms was. And so essentially it was a label. It was an excuse to prescribe me drugs and medication as a band-aid or a mask for these symptoms where the root cause of my illness went unaddressed for a long, long time. And so everything kept getting worse. Really, the medications never really worked for me. The side effects often outweighed the benefits, and I was left with a bad taste in my mouth for conventional medicine for that reason.
Yeah, that's a pretty common story also with the Western world being heavily reliable on medications and them being pushed on us whether we actually need them or
Yeah.
not, which, we don't want to play the blame game. It's not doctors' faults. Most of them go into it with pretty good intentions. They're just a victim of the system themselves. They're a tool essentially for big pharma. And people don't realize that because I think it's changing. I think it's becoming more prominent, like prominently known that you can't take a doctor's word for face value, but this is only like new in the culture. Before, like 5 years ago, people were still putting doctors upon pedestals. People still put doctors upon pedestals and just take their word for face value, not realizing that, they're human just like we are. And medical error is one of the leading causes of death, not to
Hmm.
be scary. I am terrified of the system, the medical system, honestly. I'm just gonna kill over dead one day and nobody's gonna know what happened and we're all gonna be happier for it.
I can relate to what you're saying. I mean, it's true. I don't blame any of the doctors. However, the medical schools they don't teach this stuff. And something like PANDAS, experts are estimating that 1 in 200 kids has this now. So it's something that's becoming even common, yet it's still not taught in med school. People are not educated or aware of it. Physicians don't know how to diagnose it, and they certainly don't know how to treat it in general. And so a lot of the work I do is actually to promote awareness and advocacy for PANDAS and fundraising for physician education credits to further education postdoctorate school to help teach these people exactly that, how to treat, how to diagnose, how to recognize when something is going haywire. It may not be that your kid has ADHD or OCD. It may be an underlying issue that we need to look for. PANDAS is difficult to diagnose, even if you are aware of it. It's a clinical diagnosis, so there's no like blood test you can take that says, "Hey, you've got this." It involves putting together the pieces, looking at your medical history and your infection history and your symptom load and all of these things, and putting the pieces together to say, "Hey, here's a picture of what what you're dealing with, and it resembles PANDAS, or this is definitively PANDAS." Someone who has been trained in this and who is familiar with it and well versed in it can do that, but you're going to still have to go through those those blood tests and everything to get an idea of what you're dealing with.
What was the alarming fact? Like, you said you woke up one day and suddenly had OCD and tics and all of this. W- did y'all go straight to the doctor that day? Probably not, right?
No, no. I mean, at first we brushed it off, right? Oh, it's
Yeah.
just my dad looked at me. Oh, it's he's just doing something weird. I at 13, we're all just trying to figure out who we are. We're dealing with these body changes and all these things. So we do weird things sometimes. So we brushed it off. Once my symptoms became more severe over time, over the next several months, we realized that something was definitely wrong. The part of the reason why I was misdiagnosed with Tourette's is because I exhibited that classic like profanity, cursing, impulsivity, inability to control my speech or my motor function, and I would do things like pick up my phone, put it down, pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down over and over again until it felt like just right. And I would do that with almost any object I picked up, books, forks, pencils. It was disruptive on so many levels throughout the entire course of my day. That's when we realized, like, man, something's really wrong here. Like, I can't control what I'm doing. That's when I had to really take a look at my life and think, something is wrong with me. And that was a very hard pill for me to swallow.
Sure, it can be scary.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was. Even from my parents' perspective, it was scary, like watching your child lose control like that and having no idea what's going on, having no way to help, was a very isolating and even depressing place to be. So it damaged our family life. It damaged my health. My mental health began to spiral as I dealt with these symptoms for so long because didn't want to admit that something was wrong with me. I wanted to pretend like everything was fine. I'd be sitting in school in class, and students would see me ticking and say, "Hey, man, are you okay?" And it would just drive me insane because I didn't want to be that guy who was like twitching in class. I didn't want to be known as the weirdo or the guy who can't sit still. And I just wished that everything would be normal, and it wasn't. And I put myself in a mindset of isolation and loneliness for a long time. When looking back, I really didn't have to do that to myself.
Were your parents supportive though?
Yeah, my parents were absolutely my advocates. I mean, my mom in particular scoured the internet and the library for any resources she could find on this. Because even this was 15 years ago, it was very difficult to find anyone who knew about pandas. We actually had to essentially figure it out ourselves and
Hmm.
then search for pandas doctors and find someone who was well versed in pandas so that we could go and confirm the diagnosis and find a treatment protocol because quite frankly, I was only aware of maybe two doctors at the time who even knew what this was. Lots changed since then. It's becoming more widely recognized, partly due to the work that some of the organizations I work with have done. But it's definitely easier now to get a diagnosis than it was 10, 15 years ago. And even now, more insurance companies are working with these doctors in order to provide financial assistance once you get that diagnosis, which is huge because I remember we paid out of pocket for most of the treatments. They weren't recognized by any of the insurance companies at the time. So just again, incredibly frustrating place from the doctor visit to the insurance company. The whole thing was very lackluster and put a bad taste in my mouth for conventional medicine, like I said.
Sure. Did you have to travel? I imagine that you found two doctors, they weren't nearby. That would be
Right.
too convenient.
Yeah, I'm located here in Central Virginia, and one of them was in New Jersey, and the other was in Maryland. So fortunately, it wasn't like we had to pack up and drive across the country. But yeah, we did go out of state. We did drive several hours to visit these folks.
That is super lucky though that it was just a couple of hop, skip, and a jump away instead of like
Yeah.
across the entire country.
Yeah, I will say though, at that point, I had serious physician fatigue. I mean, I was sick of doctors. I was sick of medication. From 13 to 17, I had been on over 40 different prescription meds. None of them worked. You know, it was just like, try this, see if it works. If you feel crappy, cut back. If you don't notice a difference, increase the dose. And it was just like a guessing game, like throwing pills at me and see what sticks. That was not medicine in my view. And so I got sick of it. I was tired. And at that point, my parents had to effectively just drag me to these appointments and say, "Hey, this time we think it's gonna work. This time." So I had given up hope for healing at that point, and what really changed is getting that correct diagnosis. Getting the PANDAS diagnosis put me from a mindset of, treating symptoms with pills to actually identifying the root cause of my illness, which was these underlying infections, the inflammation, the chronic inflammation in my brain and other parts of my bodies that were driving these symptoms, and targeting those issues so that we could get the infection and the inflammation under control and subsequently reduce the symptoms naturally.
And that's usually how it goes is the medication's just a band-aid masking symptoms. So it's not doing anything for the root cause. And if you're not trying to address that root cause, then most of the time the issue is just going to get worse instead of better over the long run. That's what people don't understand. They're like, just give me a pill. Like, you don't actually want that. You think you do, but you don't because not only that, but it's the side effects. You're always trading off
Mm.
one thing for another.
Well, did you know that the United States is one of only two countries worldwide that allow direct marketing of
Yep.
pharmaceutical drugs? It's insane to me. Like you
Mhm.
can't run a cigarette commercial, but you can tell people that they need this medication to clear up their skin, but the side effects are heart failure, death, like depression. My
All
mind is
those terrible
blown.
things. Yeah.
Like how is that legal? You can just directly tell people, "Hey, you need this," and now you turn the country into a bunch of hypochondriacs who are drug dependent, and it's crazy. I mean, it's a backwards approach. If you see that commercial for Prilosec or whatever, that's like a heartburn medication, I think, like a digestive, like just don't eat hot dogs all day. Like clean up your diet.
Try
You're
some
not
baking
gonna
soda and water.
you're not gonna need that pill. Yeah. So it's like, you're totally right about how, the industry and all that, but it comes down to like people want that miracle pill.
Mhm.
They're looking for that easy answer and they're not willing to change their lifestyle, change their health. Everybody knows that eating right and exercise is good for them. Everyone knows they should pray and meditate, but how many people actually do those things on a daily basis, right? It's a matter of prioritizing our health instead of waiting until a health crisis hits your life to say, "Oh crap, I need to like get it together and make some changes." And for almost a decade, although I was younger, I was essentially just looking to the doctor as like my first line of defense. Hey, give me, tell me what's wrong, give me a treatment so I can go on my way. Now, if you break your arm, the ch not chances are the doctor's going to give you a splint, fix you up, and you'll be out on your way and healed in no time. But when you show up at the doctor with something unfamiliar, something they haven't been trained in, it could be a long road to recovery.
For sure. Yeah, and I think things are changing. I think people are becoming more aware because when we were growing up, I assume you're around my age. You look like you are. When we were growing up, it wasn't considered cool to eat healthy and exercise and, read books even. The internet kind of came along a little bit later. So people didn't know that they didn't know. Yes, we know that we're supposed to exercise and eat right, but we don't actually know how to do that or what that means. We think we do, but we don't until we actually start trying to implement it. Um, when I was growing up, eating healthy was a salad, with iceberg lettuce, which is like nutritionally void, with fried chicken and drenched in ranch, cheese, croutons, bacon bits, So it's not. It's still chicken fingers. You traded the ketchup for the ranch. So you're not actually eating healthy, but people think they are because it's a salad.
Mm,
And so, there's that whole the ignorance of it, and the knowledge wasn't available until the internet, really. And even then it took until recently, I'd say, like, I started falling down the rabbit hole of health about 10 years ago. And at that point in time, everybody, I was like, oh my gosh, here's how you're supposed to eat. Did you know? And they acted like I was crazy. And oh, did you know that exercising can actually look like this and that? And it doesn't have to be just, sit-ups, which are excruciatingly terrible, and running a mile every day. Like you can do it like this or like that or like this or like that. And people looked at you like you're crazy. And then you become a conspiracy theorist because you're like, whoa, did you know that uh doctor error is one of the top leading causes of
mm.
problems, and pills are just band-aids, and everybody thought you were insane. So, the culture had to shift, it had to change, and it is becoming more and more prominent, and more people are starting to understand that they need to figure out how to take care of themselves. And um we can be like, well, our parents should have just ate better, and then we wouldn't have had to struggle so hard, and because that's where I am. I'm like, if I teach my children how to take care of themselves, they're never going to have to go through the struggle that I had to go through of figuring out what that means, even
Right.
because we think we know, but we don't until we start implementing the habits.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I fell into that bucket in a sense with regards to exercise. I ran cross country throughout high school. I ran track. I was very active and aerobically, running all the time, but it didn't do the trick for me. I mean, my tics were still bad. I would have the skip step when I ran, which was not advantageous in the race. And all these issues, I come home from practice and just kind of explode at home when I let my barriers, my walls down. And what really changed is when I shifted into weightlifting. Actually, weightlifting has been incredibly beneficial to my health compared to running because it actually my functional medicine doctor describes the muscle mass I've gained as a sink for eosinophils, or these inflammatory compounds that I was talking about that enter my brain and cause the inflammation and cause the tics and the symptoms. Uh, I used to be very underweight when I was running. I was like 135 pounds, really tiny, skin and bones, and those cytokines, those inflammatory compounds had nowhere to go. I was skin and bones. So that's what happened. They were produced in excess. They went into my brain. They caused problems. But when I gained 50, 60 pounds of muscle mass through a weightlifting routine, eating right, staying healthy over the last several years, those that muscle mass in effect, it diluted the effect of the inflammatory compounds on my body because there was more of me, but it also gave them a place to go. So these compounds can be stored in the muscle tissue instead of going into my brain. So it helped me heal on multiple levels. And that's not just true of pandas. I mean, it increases bone density.
Hmm.
It helps with anxiety. The benefits of weightlifting and strength training it benefits almost every area of your health. It's amazing. So getting myself in that routine has been incredibly helpful. And I would say my wife was the one who pushed me in and said, we're gonna do this. You're gonna get a gym membership. And I was like, no, no, I'm too busy. Like, I don't want to do that. She's like, no, no, you're gonna do it. And now it's like something that we do 4 days a week, and it's part of our schedule, and we just love it and enjoy it, and it doesn't
Hmm.
hurt as much anymore. And like, so just pushing yourself to create those new habits, in and of itself can be healing.
Yeah, you start to crave it for sure. And, any exercise will do most of those things. You have to find what works for you. I can't stand to go to the gym. It's boring. It's not mentally stimulating enough for me. And so like I'd watch shows and I'd listen to podcasts and I'd listen to books and I'm all into the wow. Okay. My cat knocked over my puzzle table, so that's sad, but I guess I was putting it together too quickly. Anyway, uh, I have to trick myself into exercise. Of course, I teach yoga twice a week, and then I also do jujitsu and play a ton of pickleball. So
Cool.
there's exercises out there for everybody. You just have to find the one that works for you and the one that lights you up. And I'd say the biggest factor of sticking with it and creating that habit in the beginning is if you can find um, a partner or a friend or a community and you know like you can start in it by yourself for sure, but it needs to be something that you're kind of interested in. Like, for example, jujitsu. I didn't know anybody in that community when I started out. It was just me being interested. And you get in there and you just show up and you show up and you show up and you start to build that community. You start to build those bonds with people. And then it makes going easy because you're not only fulfilling your physical needs, but it's doing amazing things for your mental health, not only in like the endorphins and the lowered cortisol levels and all of the chemical, physical, mental aspects, but also most people are starving for that community and that
Yeah,
connection with people.
I like that. No, that's so true. I mean, building community is huge for many reasons, but yeah, just to get yourself in those habits, to have someone behind you encouraging you and calling you, "Hey, we missed you at practice today." That's huge. I would not have pegged you for a jujitsu artist, but that's really cool. Some of my best friends are into jujitsu, and I mean, it's very clear to me how like tight-knit that community is.
Oh yeah, you really build bonds with your sparring partners for sure.
That's cool. Yeah, and I agree. It doesn't have to be weightlifting, but something that you enjoy, something that you don't dread doing or putting on the calendar, right? You have to
Mhm.
enjoy it. For me, like running was not it. Like I was so sick of running by the time I graduated high school. I was like, I never want to do this again. So getting me to run, like, hey, Ethan, you want to go out and run with me? I'm like, nah. But going to the gym, I actually enjoy pushing up the weights. It does. It helps me feel good. It helps me sleep better. It improves my appetite. So all those things are beneficial. I think too, when you wrestle with a health crisis, sometimes it's just really difficult to get out of that rut. Like you feel stuck. You're stuck with your symptoms. In my case, I had these motor tics and I would physically be stuck doing the tick.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to just take a step back and move forward and move out of that and find ways to heal. Oftentimes you're just resorting to medication or self-medicating or whatever it is that gives you a little bit of relief for the time being. But That's not a healthy way to deal with it. So I advocate for finding things that can give you natural relief without negative health benefits, like right, not drinking a six pack every night or smoking. Like find something that's beneficial that can give you enough relief to kind of step back, take a deep breath, refocus, and move forward with your life. And for me, that was anti-inflammatory supplements, namely CBD oil. It huge. I mean, I smoked cannabis for many, many years because it was the only thing I found that helped reduce my symptoms. But I would never advocate for that today because I saw the negative impact of smoking on my life, the health consequences of inhaling particulate matter, the trouble with the law that I dealt with as a young man, uh, right? The breathing issues that I faced, the psychosis and paranoia that I felt, all of those things come along as side effects of using cannabis. And I think our society has normalized the use of that plant, but it's a dangerous game to play. CBD oil is the most, I call it nature's most powerful anti-inflammatory. It's non-intoxicating. It doesn't have any of the side effects or health risks of cannabis, but you can take it orally and get like clinically shown anxiety relief from this product without any of those side effects or risks. And so for me, I remember the first time I took it, it was like a wave of anxiety left my body. I could I could take a deep breath, I could refocus, I could go about my day with a little bit of relief, and that for me was like the catalyst for this lifestyle change I've been talking about. Like I don't think I could have done it without some sort of relief because I was wallowing in my symptoms. I was self-loathing. I was woe is me, right? I was just in a really dark, negative, lonely place. And I think finding that tool for me was CBD and other powerful anti-inflammatories that could give me some relief to get me out of that space and into a mindset of like there is hope for healing. What are some things I can do? What are some habits I can implement and things I can get rid of in my life that are causing me more stress, right? And all of those things like transformed who I am and how I feel.
Yeah, it's really hard to find the thing that kicks you off on this journey. You're right. It's really easy to just stay in that dark place.
Yeah.
I know, I was, let's see, gosh, where do I even start? I started passing out all the time when I was about 14. I was diagnosed with hypoglycemia and which is low blood sugar. And going back to a lot of the things we've already covered, the only advice my doctor gave me was, oh, well, you need to eat more. Well, turns out that if your diet is garbage, it doesn't matter if you eat more.
Eat
It's
more what, right?
right. And so, we didn't know. So I was just trying to eat more. So I was eating more chips and I was eating more Hot Pockets and I was eating more ramen and nothing was getting better. In fact, things were getting worse. I couldn't get too hot or do any kind of physical activity without
Mm.
passing out. I couldn't go outside because my allergies were so bad that as soon as I stepped outside, my eyes would swell up. I'd be covered in hives, couldn't breathe. And it's amazing once you start figuring out how to actually feed yourself, which a lot of people, get stuck on because, okay, so I just eat salads now. And like, no, there's actually a whole world of food out there that most of us are not familiar with. The standard American diet is burgers and chicken fingers and ramen. And there's more than just fruits and vegetables. And you can be like, I don't like broccoli or Brussels sprouts. It's like, well, there's 1,000 different ways to prepare broccoli and Brussels sprouts, and you cannot definitively say you don't like them until you have tried every way. So just keep trying.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to the habits we form. I mean, if you're feeding yourself sugar and processed foods every day, I mean, those foods are intentionally designed to be addicting,
Yep.
right? Like, I mean, we've all felt it. Like, it's like you get hooked on those things and you see it in your kids. You know, you feed
Hmm.
them candy and bubble gum. Soon they want candy and bubble gum every morning.
Gosh.
And it's like,
Yes.
so instilling, you know, if you're a parent, instilling those habits in your kids young, you, I tell the story because it's hilarious. My 4-year-old, her favorite treat is a can of sardines. I mean, I come home from the grocery store with sardines, and you'd think I walked in with a bucket of ice cream. Sardines! She runs to the table, gets her plate out, like she's ready to go. And it is that's one of the most nutritious foods on the planet. All the omegas you get from that, the vitamins and nutrients, it's like so guiltless. You know, you can enjoy that. Now, most people don't want to eat that. Not everybody likes sardines, but find those things that are healthy. And one of the tricks I've learned is when you go to the grocery store, avoid all the center aisles.
Yeah.
Like if you walk around the perimeter of the grocery store, that's generally where they keep like all the fresh, healthy foods, the produce, the eggs, right, all the things that we can enjoy that have not been highly processed or filled with sugar
Mm.
generally are around the outside of the grocery store. And you're right. You see the culture shifting. Like people are asking for healthier things. People are trying to avoid the dyes and the artificial food colorings and flavors and the excess sugar. And you see that when how the grocery store is transformed over the last few years. All the new product offerings that are coming out that are actually pretty good and healthy and quality ingredients. But you still have to do your due diligence and weed through the junk to find the good products. So taking your time, reading the back of the ingredient labels, all those things are really important.
Yeah, it can be really difficult too. Um, on top of being hypoglycemic, I'm also allergic to soy.
Mm,
So I need to eat more, but there's next to nothing that I can eat. And so that was a really hard navigation for me in the beginning. I I was living off of oatmeal and yogurt and hummus. And turns out that if you eat too much of those things, your body starts to rebel against them. So now I can't eat oatmeal anymore because it makes my heart race every time,
mm,
which is crazy. Um, but we did really well with our kids and sugar and whatnot until they started school. And as soon as they started school, they come home with pockets full of candy every single week. And it's so infuriating. Like, why do public schools have sodas? Why is
yeah,
that a thing? It's the
yeah,
culture.
I know. And same when I went to college, you know, you had unlimited access to these dining halls with fountain sodas and sugary cereals and all this stuff, and it wreaked havoc on my body. I mean,
Hmm.
the more insidious effect of eating junk is the inflammation in your
Hmm.
body, and so my symptoms just continued to get worse as I lost control of my diet and these things. And so I began like heavily self-medicating to deal with all of those issues, and I really did not put two and two together and realize like what was really happening behind the scenes. So really, like again, my use of cannabis was effectively the same as a pharmaceutical medication, right? It was just intended to cover up the symptoms so that I could feel better for a little while, and then I'd have to go back and use it again. And so while it seemed like a natural option for me, it really wasn't. It really was not a healthy option at all. And so again, shifting away from that use of cannabis and self-medicating and finding like a more natural, holistic option was such a key for me. And I keep touching on that because, you know, like we can talk about healthy eating and exercise and all these things that we know, but I think like a big culprit in our society today is the self-medicating, right? Like people just
Sure.
go home, plop on the couch and get in their routine and they don't think about, you know, where is this going to get me 20 years from now? Right?
Hmm.
Too often we like wait for that health crisis to hit before we analyze our life or make those changes. And I've seen it with the older generation. You know,
Hmm.
they wait to get sober until they're like looking at a cancer diagnosis or something horrible. And so that's why I do this is to just promote awareness, not only for pandas, but to say like, look, wake up and make these changes now. Well, it's easier before it's too late.
Yeah, it's easier to fix a problem before it's an actual problem. So if you're being proactive and preactive, you don't have to be so reactive when things happen.
Right.
And things are less likely to happen.
And I like that you pointed out the part about your kids, teaching them good habits from the beginning. They listen to what we say, but they really watch what we do.
Hmm.
And so if if they're watching you go out and smoke every couple of hours, if they're watching you pop those beers back every night, if they're watching you eat junk food in the morning, that's what they're going to think is acceptable. That's what adults do. So, getting yourself in those good habits is not only beneficial for you, it's beneficial for the next generation to show them how to eat, to show them how to act, how to be active, how to get outside, how to do all these things that are good for our health, and that puts them at an advantage.
It does. It gives them a whole lot more energy, space, time to work with. And I don't mean energy like um I'm tired or I'm not tired. I mean energy like uh the mental capacity that I know I spent so much mental capacity trying to sift through all of my health conditions and trying to
Mm.
sift through all of my habits and sift through all of my patterns that were causing it and what's doing this and why is this that and how the hell do you food prep? What even is that? That if they just are raised already, that's normal life to them, then they have the capacity, the mental capacity to focus on all the things that, who knows what they could do with all of that leftover space.
Yeah, dealing with sickness or disability is exhausting,
Hmm.
for sure. And you know, uh, just knowing what I know now, I wish I had had access to these resources as a teenager at the age of 13. It would have made my life a whole lot easier. And so the best I can offer is just again being open and honest about what I've been through and what I'm dealing with, so that I can maybe help others who are in a similar situation. I mean, I spent so many years just being ashamed and afraid to talk about what I was dealing with. Like I said, I didn't want to admit that I had a problem. I just wanted to be normal and accepted. So when people ask me, "Hey man, are you okay?" When my parents said, "Do you want to talk about this?" I just shut down. I just said no. I bottled it all up, bared with it as an individual, and it only drove my anxiety up higher. I mean, another big turning point for me was when I decided to change my perspective on this and say, look, you got a problem you're dealing with. It's okay. Let's be honest. Every one of us has a challenge or an obstacle they're facing in life, and if you don't right now, you will at some point.
Hmm.
So just realizing that and thinking, I'm not alone. Uh, I'm not alone. There's other people who are dealing with this. There's other people who are going through junk. And being okay with that has not only taken the weight off my shoulders and reduced my anxiety and expectations of myself, but it's put me in a position to offer this advice to others and help others who are battling a similar struggle. So that was very freeing for me, and it's given me purpose. And so I always recommend, like, if you're listening to this, you got a health problem or anxiety or some kind of issue you're facing, like, don't be afraid to talk about it, because like bottling it up, keeping it to yourself, it doesn't help you, it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, you got to use the resources that you have available to find solutions, and the people around you can be wonderful resources
Yeah,
when they're not
absolutely.
dismissing you.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, yeah, like, you might have to go through 20 or 30 no's before you get the yes, but like you're never going to find the answers if you're not willing to talk about it in the first place. So being willing to touch failure a few times in order to find success is key. I mean, I view a lot of the failures and the medications and the things I tried that didn't work. I view a lot of those failures as just like, I know 100 ways not to do it now, and I
Mhm.
found the thing that works for me. So don't be afraid to fail either, but realize that that's just kind of the process of figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, and talking about your struggles really brings the sense of awareness that's important is that social media has made a lot of these problems. They've brought awareness to things like OCD and ADHD and anxiety, mental health, which is great in one way, but in another way, it's made it almost cool to have these things. So on a regular basis, I hear people talk about, oh, my ADHD. And I'm like, you are so not ADHD. And, or, oh, my OCD. I'm like, child. So that bothers me a lot of people self-diagnosing things that they don't actually understand because they've seen TikTok trends on it. And they're like, oh, I do that. I'm like, well, I think everybody kind of cleans like that, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has those tendencies, but if you feel like if you feel that way enough to diagnose yourself with those things, I feel like there may be some truth to that. Maybe you don't have OCD, but maybe you like, you have these compulsive thoughts and you don't know what to do with them. You don't know how to handle them and manage them. That's probably the issue, not that you like are obsessive compulsive to the point where it's like a disorder and you need medication for it or whatever, but the fact that like we all have these like inappropriate intrusive thoughts from time to time, but it's about like how do you push them out and move forward and not let it become a problem. That's where most people I think are lacking those management skills. Like ADHD, there was a study through an accredited university that put people in front of two different screens. One of the screens was a math lesson. So they're sitting there watching someone teach them algebra or whatever, and you see the guy like rocking back and forth in the chair, looking up, looking down, spinning around, tapping, doing anything except focusing on the math lesson. Then they put that same person in front of a Star Wars movie, and he sits perfectly still. He's
Mm-hmm.
completely engaged in the movie. That shows he does not have ADHD. If you have ADHD, you wouldn't have been able to focus on either one. It was a selective attention problem that they have let go for too long to where they cannot focus on math because they haven't developed a discipline, they haven't developed the focus skills that they need, yet they can watch Star Wars and be entertained all
Mm-hmm.
day. So I think OCD, all these things are very much overdiagnosed, whether you're self-diagnosing or getting a diagnosis from a doctor. It's really easy to see someone like not paying attention in math class and say, "Oh yeah, they need medication." Like that's the problem. We're overprescribing these drugs. We're overdiagnosing people with things that they probably don't even have. And if we were simply to change our lifestyle, change our habits, learn how to focus, teach ourselves new skills, we wouldn't have to deal with these issues to begin with. Now, I like to tell people with regards to PANDAS, I'm 95% healed at this point. I still deal with the impact of this illness on my life on a daily basis. I still have lingering tics. I still have lingering compulsions, but I've learned life skills that allow me to move forward without them interfering with my life. I don't have those flare-ups and those mental breakdowns that I used to have as a teenager because I've learned how to manage these symptoms. I've learned coping skills like deep breathing exercises. I've learned how to mitigate stress naturally. I've learned how to eliminate or avoid stress triggers that bother me. All of these things have got led me to the point where yes, I've gotten rid of the strep throat infection. Yes, I've done a lot of things to reduce my inflammation. So the healing part is valid, but also from like a symptom management standpoint, I've learned so many of these skills through cognitive behavioral therapy training and other lifestyle changes that have really helped me to heal on a greater level.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are taking just the normal, natural human experience, which is ridiculously complex and quite painful a lot of times, just trying to figure out how to navigate and emotionally regulate and to kind of take the responsibility off of us. We're diagnosing ourselves with things that may not actually be things to diagnose ourselves with. And whereas we could put in a little work, a little discipline and find habits and patterns that could fix these things without medication for sure.
Yeah, I think the self-diagnosing is almost a cop-out. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I've got OCD. My OCD is kicking in again, and it's like a humorous thing, but it's an excuse to just like live out those
Mhm.
symptoms and not take responsibility for them, not work on them, and it's like, sorry if this bothers you, it's my OCD. It's like, well, you're not sorry because you're just doing it. You,
Mhm.
so if you really wanted to work on it and improve your life so that you didn't have those symptoms, you can do it. But again, we're not equipped with those resources unless we seek out like a specialist who knows what they're doing. So
Yep.
I don't know. I've written a lot about this on my blog and the things that I've done, but I think like retraining your brain is possible, especially if you're
Mhm.
dealing with these neuro symptoms like we've been talking about. Like it's just so important to just take control over your health and not, resort to medication or just relying on a doctor or a diagnosis to get you where you need to be because, 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be a good solution for you.
Yeah, everything starts in the mind. Everything. So that is absolutely the best place to start, but it's there's a lot of factors in people not wanting to, um, like trauma for one, those bad memories that you don't want to relive because you're going to as soon as you have time and space for them to come up. No, we have to. We feel like we have to distract ourselves 24/7 because if we
Yeah.
sit still for a moment, then we're going to have all those memories are going to stir up and then we're going to have to face them and we don't want to face them. We just want to run from them. And so it's paralysis, it's they don't want to sit and it's easier to keep doing what you're doing rather than change the momentum because if you're moving in one direction for say 20 years and then you want to start moving in the other direction, you have to slow the momentum to a halt before you can flip over and start going the other direction. And that's difficult in a lot of ways for a lot of people.
Yeah, certainly is. I mean, with just, looking back at, for example, my cannabis use, it was really difficult. I mean, I don't let anyone fool you and tell you it's not addicting. Like it was definitely habit forming for me. And to be able to step back and reassess and change that lifestyle, it wasn't just like quitting smoking. It was like the paraphernalia that came with that, the people I was hanging around, the influences. It's just like there's so many factors, and the deeper you get into these habits, like the harder it is to leave them.
Hmm.
So we have to be very intentional with everything we put into our bodies and with everything we do, and think, why am I doing this? Why am I flipping on the TV when I get home? If TV is a problem for you, it sounds crazy, but like get rid of it. Like
Hmm.
I don't have a TV in my house at all. Like we don't watch it, and it's just because it is a window to the outside world that is trying to sell you stuff you don't need, fill
Hmm.
your house with negative influence, and it's like we just don't need that. There's so many other things we can do. We spend a lot of time outside. My kids read more books on an average day than most kids do in a month. We're we're filling that time that would normally be filled with TV and video games. We're filling that time with more productive activities. Yesterday we went out and we went down to the lake and we fished and we caught bass, and it's just being out in nature, getting the sunshine. I mean, you know, fishing's not for everybody, but like finding things that you enjoy that help you feel fulfilled, that give you value and purpose, it's going to impact your life on such a greater level than just trying to fill that time with void, pointless entertainment.
Absolutely. Getting out in nature, the more time you can spend in nature, the better you're going to feel and be, and it will eventually heal you, especially the more connected you get to it. We garden and we camp and we do a lot of kayaking. I'm super excited for kayaking season to start now
Yeah.
that the water's warming up. I got a brand new kayak for Christmas, so that's exciting. It hasn't been in the water yet. Um, but the serenity of being out in nature is healing on a really deep level. Like, um, it's something that we've disconnected ourselves from nature, and we all feel like there's a hole inside of us, and we're trying to fill that hole with stuff and entertainment and distractions when you can feel it by just going outside and sitting and breathing.
Mm.
You can feel it by focusing on the relationships in your life, because that's really, of all the things we think we want in life, the only thing we actually want when you really get down to the root of it all is we want to feel good physically. We don't want to feel sick. And then we want to feel loved and connected to people and things. That's it. It's not really a whole lot deeper than that. So if you can focus on self-care, like people, they think they don't have time for self-care. They don't have time to exercise. They don't have time to meditate. They don't have time to figure out how to feed themselves. But if you don't figure out how to make the time, because there's literally nothing more important. We've been sold this
Yeah.
story of money and cars and houses, and I would give absolutely every bit of it away just to move in my camper with my family. Like, I absolutely would just move into the woods and never look back if only I could convince my husband to do so.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I've definitely had those inclinations at certain times for sure. It's all that's awesome. Yeah, I think nature is healing, and in fact, where my life kind of transitioned was when I took a job on a farm. I moved out to Colorado. I packed everything I owned in my car and drove out to Colorado and took this job on the oldest farm in the state of Colorado. And that's actually where I was introduced into hemp and CBD, ironically, moving out there with the intention of like escaping the persecution for using cannabis here in Virginia. I went out there with the intentions of kind of like using my medicine without risk of getting in trouble, and actually through that transitioned away from cannabis and into CBD, which kind of set me off on my life's journey. But while I was out there, I just fell in love with the lifestyle, eating fresh farm to table produce every day,
Mhm.
working out in the soil with my hands, exerting myself, digging in the rows, plant, seeing life grow around me every day. It's there just myriad benefits that came with that lifestyle, and it was so refreshing moving from college, fast-paced, stressful lifestyle to having basically no responsibilities except for getting the day's chores done, was freeing mentally. So I just, it was like a total transition from modern American college life to working out in nature and relaxing and breathing fresh mountain air and all these things every day. And that was a big wake up call for me just to kind of, I when I was young, I was carefree like we all were and running out. I spent most of my time outside, but I kind of lost sight of that through high school and college, just focusing on career and what was I going to be when I grew up and this and that. And
Mhm.
going out onto the farm kind of reset that for me and put my focus back onto like the more important things in life. And so I really appreciated that experience, and we kind of embody that with the way we live today. We have 10 acres out here and we have a garden, and we love to go fishing and all this stuff. So again, it's important to support yourself and have a career and a purpose and all that, but we also don't want to lose sight of the things that make us feel whole and fulfilled.
Yeah, and most people unfortunately don't realize what they're actually looking for. Our culture says to do more, do more, do more, do more, and that's how you're going to feel whole and fulfilled, when it's counterintuitive, but we need to do less, lots less. If you feel like you don't have time, you're doing too much. You're doing way too much. Why are you doing those things? It's important to ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Where did those patterns come from? Is it something that actually supports what you're after? Or is it something that is just filling time escapism, lots of things.
Sometimes it's good to just sit back and do absolutely nothing, and it's freeing and relaxing, and we did some of that yesterday on Sunday. Just I built these rocking chairs, and we sat back with the kids and just rocked and listened to the breeze and relaxed, and it was just very refreshing, very good for the soul, and especially moving into Monday, it makes the work week a little bit easier.
Yeah, they say that there's like a proverb or something that says everyone should meditate for an hour every day, unless you're really busy that day, in which you should meditate for 2 hours.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
that's very true.
let everybody know how they can find you. Plug whatever you like.
Yeah, so greenvalleynutrition.com is my website. I have my blog on there. If you're interested in PANDAS or my healing journey, I post on there, more specifically the things I've done with all my lifestyle change. We have our annual 5K fundraiser coming up in April, which I'm really excited about. I posted on there, but my website is a wealth of resources for that. We manufacture a industry leading brand of CBD products. I started in the spare bedroom of my house almost 10 years ago, and now we operate a state of the art manufacturing facility here in Virginia. It's a family owned business, and we just want to help people feel better. So, absolutely don't feel like you have to go buy CBD, but again, for me, that was like the catalyst for my healing and finding those tools that worked and helped me to feel better. So, if that's something you're interested in learning more about, we've got plenty of information and resources on that. CBD is if it's THC free, if it contains no intoxicating compounds, it's safe for everybody. It's safe for people being drug screened for work. It's safe for pets. It's safe for grandma. It's safe for your kids. Like I can't tell you how many people are using this for their ADHD or their kids with autism or their achy joints or help them sleep better. I mean, there's so many benefits from this anti-inflammatory compound in your life. It's generally worth a try if you're suffering from any of these ailments. So anyway, go to greenvalleynutrition.com, check it out. Feel free to contact us. I'm easy to reach, and so happy to help or provide insights any way I can.
Awesome. And I'll make sure all that's linked below. Yeah, there's always another tool, always another noodle to throw at the wall and see if it sticks. So the important thing is just not to give up, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, life will hand you challenges and things you're not prepared for, but definitely
Always.
not giving up is the key, right? Try again. I love Thomas Edison said, he had 10,000 different iterations of the light bulb before he found what worked.
Mm-hmm.
And when they said like, why didn't you give up after all these failures? And he said, I didn't have any failures. I just found 9,999 ways not to make a light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
So not giving up, you never know how, you may be one step away from finding that thing that works and that success. So never giving up and trying again is the key. It's easier said than done, but hopefully that resonates with people and encourages them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We'll let them go and enjoy the rest of their day.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Savannah. Thank you.